So we're going to begin with a prayer this evening and continue on. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Amen. Good and gracious God, we thank you and praise you for the gift of this day, the gift of our lives. Thank you for allowing us to come together to reflect upon a worldwide problem, a worldwide concern in human trafficking. Thank you for the dedication of our speakers this evening that will share with us about more information about this. We pray that you continue to guide us as we deliberate over what we can do to help in this and any other kind of social and cultural issues that we have in our world. We call upon the prompting of the Holy Spirit to enable us to respond to those promptings and to do all that we can to assist in any way. And we make these prayers in Christ's name. Amen. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. St. John Neumann, pray for us. Yes, I'd like to, a number of you were at Mass this evening, but other Masses, again, we have Father Jeff Bayhi, Father Chuck Swanson, and Ted Poe, a former congressman here from Texas. So I will let them take over. I don't know how they're going to do their little dog and pony show this evening, but we're here and we're attentive.
Father Dean, thank you for allowing us to be here. We're very, very happy to be here. I retired 1 week ago today. I've been a parish priest 44 years. And so, with my brother by another mother, Father Chuck and I, it's our goal to, first of all, educate. Let people understand what we don't see. We have a former supervisor of human trafficking from the Austin PD department here. And let me tell you, he'll verify everything that we say. He'll verify everything that we say, and it's just one of those things that's flown under the radar. You know, we live in a world that if you use the wrong pronoun today, you can lose your tenured professorship in a university. We have 50 million slaves worldwide. We have more slaves in today than we had in the 400 years of the African slave trade. And 10% or 11% are sold right here in the United States. That means about 5.5 million people are trafficked in the United States every year. 85% of them are American born. We think, that border problem, we can get on whatever side of politics you want to be on, and we can blame it. They're not someone else's kids. First of all, they're kids, and that's all that matters. But they're our kids. And I'm very, very happy to have the opportunity to come to know former Congressman Ted Poe, who was a congressman for 16 years for the Houston Beaumont district. I don't know how many people are native Texans, but if you're not, I will interpret English second language. And he's a great friend, and we're very close, but he'll very gladly tell you he's from Texas, and they speak slow. And I've accused him of taking an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes, but he says he can do it otherwise. So I'm going to let former Congressman Judge Ted Poe lead us off, and then Father Chuck Swanson and I will follow. Judge?
Thank you, Father Jeff. I appreciate that introduction. Normally he says that I'm the only person he knows that uses the word Jesus and uses it in 3 syllables, Jesus, because I'm from Texas. So anyway, thank you for being here. Father, thanks for allowing us to come by. I was in Congress. I just retired from Congress, and before that I was a judge in Houston for 22 years. saw felony cases, the major crimes, and before that as a prosecutor. Spent some time in the Air Force before that. I just mentioned that so you kind of know where I'm coming from. When I got to Congress, myself and Jim Costa from California formed the Victims' Rights Caucus. You've probably never heard of it because it was a very active caucus. It was bipartisan, 40 Republicans, 40 Democrats, and we worked to advocate on behalf of victims of crime. There are a lot of caucuses in Congress. You know, there's the offshore drilling caucus. There's the anti-offshore drilling caucus. There's the gun lobby. There's the no-gun lobby. There are lots of caucuses. But when I got to Congress, there wasn't a caucus for victims. And if you think long enough, you can figure out the reason why. There's no money involved for victims of crime. That's a different issue. Anyway, so while I was in Congress, this young person showed up in my office. I didn't know who she was. She just told the receptionist, I want to see Judge Poe. That's what they called me in Congress. That's what Father Jeff still needs to call me, his judge. But anyway, she came in my office, young person from Austin. And she told me a story that I didn't believe, really, at first. That she grew up here in Austin, and all of a sudden, she found herself being sold as a minor in different places in Austin for sex. And this occurred for several years. She was able finally to be rescued by the Austin Police Department, and she still lives here and talks about the issue of human sex trafficking and what it is happening in our society. Very briefly about what that means. Trafficking is not people coming across the border. The technical term would be smuggling if they're coming without permission. Trafficking is the buying and selling primarily of children on the marketplace for money. The average trafficking victim in the United States is 13. That's the average. So there's some that are younger, some that are older. But that's the average. And most of them are girls. Some are boys, but most of them are girls. So what is happening here? Well, big statistic. We all know that the number one criminal organization in the world deals in drugs. They sell drugs all over the world. It's all because of the money. There's a lot of money in drugs. Billions of dollars in drugs. But you know what number 2 has become now in the world for criminal enterprises? Is the buying and selling of children and adults, primarily women. Why has it grown so rapidly? Well, it's all about the money. In drugs, you have drugs and the drugs are sold one time. Children are sold multiple times a day. Some of these girls that we know are sold 15 to 20 times a day. So, drugs can be sold once, children can be sold more than once. The apprehension of drug dealers is higher than what would happen to the apprehension of traffickers, sex traffickers. And the punishment is higher for drug dealers. You know, we catch a drug dealer every once in a while and we put them in the slammer forever. But you don't ever hear about traffickers getting convicted because the apprehension rate is lower, the punishment is somewhat lower, and the victims can be sold more than once. So that's why the demand has gotten so high in the world. And so what has Congress done about it? Well, we passed some major legislation. It's a Victims of Trafficking Act, Justice for Victims of Trafficking Act, bipartisan. You know, you probably never heard of it. You know, you never hear about things that Congress does on a bipartisan basis that are good, like the trafficking legislation because we're not fussing and fighting and feuding with each other. But it's a good piece of legislation. It's the major legislation for the federal authorities to prosecute those who are involved in human sex trafficking. And that would be taking care of the trafficker, but rescuing the victim and treating the victim like a victim of crime. These girls are not criminals. They're not prostitutes. They are victims of the slave trade. A 13-year-old cannot consent to sex in Texas and in most states. So don't let people tell you that they are prostitutes. They're not. And they're doing what they're doing because they are forced to do it. And they're across the board on how they get trafficked in the trade. And then there's the buyer. As a side note, my opinion, the reason it has increased so much in the United States and around the world is because of the demand. And the demand comes from buyers, primarily males. And those of us who are males, we've got a job to do with other males, and especially our sons and grandsons, so that they understand the sanctity and the value of somebody else's life. But lots of demand. That's why there is so much of it. Anyway, so it's a massive issue. Let me narrow it down for what the real situation is. Now we have laws that will go after the traffickers. Texas has good laws that goes after the traffickers. Those are the people who sell the kids. We've finally got good laws that go after the demand. I'm one for going after the buyer. Don't make their names secret like we have continued to do over the years. Let the public know who they are. But the most important person in the whole scheme of the trafficking epidemic is the victim of crime. You know, the good Lord told the greatest story ever told about compassion. And you remember the story. It was a guy that was going from Jerusalem to Jericho, or shall I say, from Austin to Houston, and gets beat up by a bunch of robbers, thrown in the ditch, and good people walked around him. Finally, somebody, a Samaritan, came, rescued him, took care of his medical needs, and that's the story of the Good Samaritan. Now, who was Jesus saying to have the compassion on? It wasn't the robbers. It was the victim of that crime, is who we are to have compassion on. And remember, most of them are 13-year-old children that get sold on the marketplace of sex slavery. So the system is finally treating those young people as victims of crime. That's good, because they are victims. They're being rescued. Here's the problem. On the front end, you've got the trafficker, the buyer. You've got the victim. The victim is rescued. What happens to most of those victims that are rescued here in Texas? What do you think happens to them? They go to jail. Why do they go to jail? Nothing against law enforcement. But in different parts of Texas, there's no place to put these young victims. So they put them in juvenile custody because there's no place for them. And that is the crux of the problem. There is no place, shelters for trafficked victims, sex trafficked victims, minors primarily, in the United States. Give you an example. How many of you own a dog? I mean, if you're from Texas, you've got to own a dog, you know. We got three of them, 3 Dalmatians. I call them the weapons of mass destruction. Yeah. You know, I got one of them from Dalmatian Rescue in Dallas. Anyway, there are 5,000 shelters for animals. I saw a commercial, 2 commercials today on TV about taking care of from the SPCA. 5,000 shelters. And you got, 50, 100 places in each of those shelters.
Now think about that. It's 2023. We hear people talking about reparations from 7 generations ago. We do nothing for 50 million slaves worldwide. 89% of the slaves are sold into sex trafficking. The other 11% are either forced labor or organ procurement. You're starving in a third world country, you got 2 good kidneys, you can sell one, and you can feed your family. And that's becoming more and more prevalent. We work with Dr. Frank Delmonico, our Mass General. What's happened? You know, when we first opened up, we wanted to talk about, you know, we're licensed by the state of Louisiana. We want to get state funding for taking care of children. Well, we're not willing to abide by the state and federal definition of women's health care. We're not going to save one and kill another one. Not going to happen. If I got to go out, beg, borrow, and steal, it ain't going to happen. We're not going to be abortion providers. And that's almost become a creed that in order for us to have any support. Think about, and I read a story, and it's Portland, Oregon, spends $100,000 a year on each homeless person in Portland, Oregon. I don't need to tell you about the border. I don't need to tell you about the billions that have gone into that. I went to the Department of Justice and asked about funding. Well, let me ask you something, Father. Suppose someone is anatomically male, but self-identifies as female, and they're being trafficked. Are they welcome in your shelter? Well, that's easy. The answer is not no. The answer is hell no. If you think I'm going to let an anatomically correct male sleep next to teenage girls who've been raped 2, 3, as much as 4,000 times, it's not going to happen. Well, you're not inclusive. You're not eligible for any funding. How does this happen? On the North Shore of New Orleans, and it's a pretty upper middle class area, we arrested a high school senior, 17 years old, for trafficking 2 freshman girls. The deal was, these little freshman girls got there, and this guy's the big man on campus. He's a football hero and everything like that. Those of you who have children, you know what I'm talking about when I talk about sexting. You know, it became a thing with kids. Yeah, I love you too. Send me a picture of your privates. And they send a picture. He got the picture, 2 little freshman girls. Bitch, I own you. And everyone in school is going to see this picture. He was making $1,000 a week selling 2 freshman girls to his friends, a high school senior. Wait, here's a bigger question. Who raises a child who at the age of 17 thinks that they can buy and sell another human being? Tell me what's wrong with that. Tell me what's wrong with that picture. You know, Angel Studios sent me the movie, The Sound of Freedom, and I reviewed it 3 months ago, 3 weeks ago. I'm sorry. I'm in Texas. I'm thinking slow.
Yeah, we're going to call the police.
I got that post syndrome. Okay. But 3 weeks ago, I reviewed it. If some of you have seen it, it's powerful. It's really powerful. But it's not us. I mean, and I'm not at all going to say anything about the commitment and the conviction of Tim Ballard, a Homeland Security guy who went down there and did heroic things. We've had a juvenile shelter in operation for the last 5.5 years. I have 5 wonderful religious sisters who live there. Father Chuck and I do a lot of talking. We're not the heroes. They are. These incredible women are just magnificent. They live. Have you ever raised a hysterical teenage daughter? Get 11 of them in one house who've been traumatized and raped and live in that. They're incredible. We've served 85 children in the last 5.5 years. 82 of them are American born. 78 are Louisiana born. The other, 4 have been from around the country because we're the only place that does it. There is no other juvenile facility in the country that's licensed by the state that can take them from 0 to 18 years old, take them when they're pregnant, house their babies, keep their babies, educate the girls, educate the babies, and raise them as our own. Father Chuck and I are grandfathers. Our first grandson is Francisco. Okay? But everyone thinks this is something that is because of the border. This is part of mankind's fallen human nature. As priests, we hear confessions. I'm sure Father Dean will bear this out. When we hear confessions, probably 70% of the male confessions between the ages of 12 and 90 struggle with online pornography. Okay? It's right here. All you got to do is dial it up. When I was growing up, I had 3 older brothers. I had to work to find pornography, okay? But I climbed up in the closet and found my brother's Playboy. But that's nothing. Online pornography is a $152 billion a year enterprise. Let me put that in perspective. Take Major League Baseball, take the NFL, take the FIFA World Cup, and take every 18-year-old in the country and give them a 4-year scholarship to Stanford. That's not $152 billion. We had a young girl who lived in a gated community and went to the most expensive private high school. She goes online, she's at a party. Her friends are ready to leave. She's not. Go ahead and go. Somebody will take me. Goes on Facebook. Hey, I'm here. Some guy shows up. Yeah, Cindy told me to come get you because you want to go wherever. Her parents had resources, so they were able to hire 2 ex-FBI agents. They found her 14 months later in the porn industry in Los Angeles, track marks all up and down her arm. She was addicted. Her affect she was catatonic in her affect, and she could remember 30 to 40 times a day having sex forced on her. What do you do with that? What do you do with that? And this is what's going on. These are our children, and this is happening. And frankly, no one gives a damn. No one is stepping up. The judge talking about shelters, we can easily take care of 500,000 plus animals. Total, for juveniles and adults, there's less than 700 beds throughout this country. Why? It's hard. It's really hard. The average stay, and I work a lot with Governor Abbott's office, a lady there by the name of Andrea Sparks, who's now left, and she's working with Buckner International. But, the challenge is for people who work in shelters, and I think Carrie has worked in a shelter, The average stay is less than 6 months. That's tough work. And you can go down the street to Buc-ee's and get a job making a lot more money. It takes us $850,000 a year to take care of our children. And that's, we beg, borrow, and steal and do what we need to do. But the reality is, they're in our neighborhoods. They're in our schools. You want to get sick and lose your breakfast? 42% of our children are trafficked by their primary caregiver, their own family. Their mother, their father, their mother's boyfriend. They're selling their own children. It's easier than working. You can make $5,000 to $7,000 a week off a child. We've had 3 or 4 girls turn 11 2 or 3 months after they've been with us. We got a call from Colorado. They had a 6-year-old that nobody wanted. Dad was a porn star. Mom was a crack whore. Grandmother didn't want her. We'll take her. And then the grandfather stepped in. God in heaven knows what happened. Our first one from Colorado, she started being fooled with at the age of 2 by her father. As an adult, she saw porn videos and recognized herself as a preschooler. She said, on Saturday mornings, my little brother got to watch cartoons. I had to watch porn videos so that I would know what to do. Dad trafficked her and said, if you tell anybody, I'm going to kill your mother and your little brother. She loved her mother and her little brother. She never made a B. She never made a B. Straight A's. She was an All-American high school soccer player and first alternate for the '98 Olympics for the U.S. team. At the age of 16, because she was regular, Dad would check her out of school, bring her to the parking lot, take care of business in the back of a car, check her back in school. She finally realized other girls hadn't had to do this. She reported her dad. Her dad got charged with 29 counts. He was convicted of 27 counts. He spent 2 months in jail. In the recreation department of, we call them, you guys are counties, we're the only ones who are parishes, right? But the parish recreation department, we had a coach of 12-year-old little girls. He goes online and he finds him a 15-year-old from the Gulf Coast. Brings her, starts trafficking her, and about 2 weeks later, the little girl breaks free, calls her mother down on the Gulf Coast. The guy is rescued, and the little girl is rescued. He was given a $15,000 bond. He had made that much money on the little girl and had cash on him and walked out. And a week later, he was back in the gym because he's innocent until proven guilty with 12-year-old little girls. What we're telling you is this is untapped. It's undealt with. 2 years ago, I brought in my first shelter that we financed was right in back of the cemetery in Anzio Beach in the parish convent of St. Maria Goretti. The second was in Lagos, Nigeria. We spoke on a bishop's visit in Rome about doing shelters. They said, where we get nuns. So I made my contacts. We got 24 nuns from Lagos, Nigeria to come here. Father Chuck was in charge of the training. They're now working in Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, and Colorado as caregivers. What we want to do, we've been asked by the Order of Malta to be consultants and help them establish these shelters around the country to bring in religious sisters to be caregivers. Now, please don't think I stand here and think I got this licked and I know the answers. Every day is a new day with us. Every new child is a new set of circumstances. But we're making progress. And this sister model, caregiver model, is what we're doing. I have 16 religious sisters in India who've agreed to come. And at the end of it, we're going to ask your support. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask Father Chuck, who's at the house every day with the girls. And Father Chuck is just going to give you a little insight into what we deal with every day.
One of the questions we always get is, tell us about the success of the girls. You know what they want to hear? They want to hear, oh, they got this master degree and now they're married and they're happy and they're, doing this and that. Well, we're only 5 years old. We're hoping in a few years we can tell you that. But when I ask the sisters, what do they think success is? Well, when Lola stopped sleeping in the closet. It's not only Lola, but most of the girls sleep in the closet because it's a safe place for them. If the trafficker is looking for them in the bed, they're not in the bed, well, he goes next door and grabs somebody else. Tell you about how much money they can make. A girl can make between $100,000 and $160,000 a year for a trafficker. Judge Poe said, and he was absolutely right, high rewards, low risk at punishment. High rewards, low risk at punishment. When the girls come, we have a juvenile shelter. That means they have a lot of needs. I mean, just needs for your own children. Your own child has to go to the dentist, doesn't she or he? Or go to the doctor or go to school. Most of them have not been to a doctor. Most of them have not been to a dentist. When we give them a test, because we have education with the girls, they go to school, homeschooling, there with the sisters. They come out at the 4th grade level. And I understand that's the lowest level, that they can't go any further down in that. So we have to, we have to provide counseling for them. We don't take girls that are drug addicts, but almost 100% of the girls that we have are drug users, 100%. Wouldn't you say that, Jess? 100. Yeah. That's one of the ways they can, live and be controlled, yeah. Tell you about some of the girls are really, really, really damaged. They really are very, very damaged. Tell you about 2 of them. One girl, about this tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, kind of out of the gangs in New Orleans, tough. Looks like a baby doll, but tough. Leela came to us. She was sucking a binky. You know what we call in Nebraska, binkies? Pacifier. Yeah.
Texas is a pacifier.
Oh, we call them binkies. You know what you're drinking her water out of? A baby bottle with a nipple on it. She carried a lion, little toy. She was 16. She said, how old? 16. Gives you an idea what age she was when she got trafficked. Tough. On a room. Every room that we have there has their private bedroom, private bathroom, little desk, chair in there. Puts on her door, you don't love me, leave me alone. So she came there. Well, she was also really smart. She started writing poetry there. And I would read it and tears would come to my eyes. Because it was so painful, so painful. Really smart. She did her high school equivalency in 6 months. Yeah, wow. Yeah, really bright, really bright. With the sisters' care and sisters' love, the sisters are kind of surrogate mothers, really, in a sense. The girls know they're not there for a paycheck. The girls know who's going to be there in the morning. They didn't know that in the other shelters. When she left, the sign was gone. I love you all. I love all. Calls the sisters now. She's, turned 18 and gone. And so, they don't. She gave each of the sisters $5. What a great gift. That kind of gives you an answer to what success is. That gives you an answer what success is.
She also left her painting or something.
Yeah. Father Jeff has the baby bottle. Anyway, so that's one of the stories. I also want to tell you how damaged they are and how long it lasts. He was telling me about the girl, the 2-year-old and the guy who got two months for his daughter and that kind of thing. She's an adult now, and she's from Colorado, and we use her as a resource. And she was coming right at the very beginning when we were opening to kind of teach the sisters. I was in a car with her going maybe to lunch or something, and we were talking about it, and she said, I still have some of the nightmares. She said, you know what? I'm married to the best man you'll ever want to be married to. I really love him. I trust him totally. I really trust him. She said, but when our little girl Mary was born, and he was to give her a bath, I walked past the door several times, just checking it out. I mean, she's had she was in the legislature there in Colorado. She's got her master's degree in counseling and started a counseling service. That's how tough it is. I think the third girl we had is Allie. Allie was the third girl. Oh, all right, the second girl. Allie, about this tall, black hair, beautiful face. Just, come up and hug you. Just really. Well, right at the very beginning, it was about Easter time, and one of the volunteers that came there, and all the volunteers that work in a juvenile shelter have to be vetted, which means they have to be fingerprinted by the FBI once a year, and all that. So anyway, she decided that every girl needs a new dress for Easter. And I think we only had maybe 4 girls at that time because we were just really getting started. And so she takes them all out, buys them a dress of their choice, takes them to the place where they do the nails, that, toenails, that, and then puts together a basket, of eye stuff. You know what you get a teenage girl, you got a teenage girl, you know what I'm talking about, all right? And then invites the 4 girls to her home, and she has a daughter, also named Mary, same age as the kids, same as the girls that are there. And they have a very nice home, very nice home. They have a swimming pool in the backyard, and they have horses that they can ride. This is in Louisiana. They have a little pond that goes past there. It's not a pond, it's a creek. So that goes there. And Father Jeff and I went over there for dinner. It was a wonderful dinner, and the kids were having a great time. And so the next day I go there, said, Father, you know what happened? We got home, you know what? Allie went up to her room and tried to hang herself. I said, what? Yeah. I said, Allie, what happened last night? Why'd you do that? She said, I don't know why God made me and made Mary. How come Mary has so much and I have nothing? God must hate me. Yeah. Get your bottle. Anyway, that gives you some idea what happens to the kids. Just one very quick one, because we want you to ask us what you want to know about it, all right? And that's this. That now you distracted me, and I can't remember what the one thing was. You know, when you're 83 years old, sometimes it goes like that. It'll come up. Questions.
I have questions. Start here.
How can you let people get involved in helping, of course, monetarily, but not always?
Well, first of all, let me get in front of the mic.
Yeah, how can lay people get involved?
Yeah, well, first of all, this is part of our mission. We need, how many people knew this before you came here tonight besides the detective?
Oh, now I remember.
A mind's a terrible thing to waste. But,
Answer his question.
no, first of all, we need to educate. We're getting ready to go to the Napa Conference. We're doing talks in Oakland, Stockton, Santa Barbara, LA, and then flying up to Wisconsin. First of all, we need to get the word out, and I'm glad Father Dean agreed to have this, and Ben is helping us get this out, and I'm not going to play with the microphone. But people need to know our role at this point, for us, is we want to educate the public and we want to educate the church. Most people, I've never heard a sermon about this. No, most people don't know this. Most priests and bishops don't know this. So we're hoping to be able to go to the dioceses around the country and do a morning of reflection and let people know. Second thing is that old see something, say something. You're in Walmart and there's someone, 28 years old, and he's got 3 or 4 little girls who are teenagers that are, something's wrong with that picture. Something's wrong with that picture. Not old enough to be their dad. No one has 3 girlfriends that they each other know about anyway, but no one does that, okay? Something's wrong. Don't do anything. Happen to check out when they check out. Happen to walk past the car that they're in. Get that license plate number and call him and say, hey, something's fishy here. You know, and he was in charge of sex trafficking for Austin. They would pay attention to that. They would red flag that. Maybe innocent, I doubt it. I happened to be at the Sarasota airport, and this older man with a child that you could tell genetically was not his. Okay? She wouldn't make eye contact. I just kind of said something to him, or to her, and she wouldn't look at me, and he answered. Okay? And then a black SUV pulls up and grabs them both, and they take off. Something's going on. Here's the license. We need to do that. Judge, you want to say something?
Yeah, don't confront them at all. You know, get their license plate if you can, and do the thing, You know, because there's two types of people who do the pimps who do the thing. One is a Romeo pimp, and the other is called a gorilla pimp. The Romeo pimp pretends that they're in love with each other, and that, oh, you're the best thing that's come along, sweetheart, and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, I've spent some money. You got to do this for me now. And so she gets trapped into that. The gorilla pimp, if you don't do that, I'm going to take care of your little brother. Yeah. If you don't do that, everybody's going to see your picture at the high school with what you're doing.
I'm going to kill your mama.
I'm going to kill your mama, too. So, yeah.
I just wanted to comment on your question. We can start with ourselves and our own family. We have to know what's really going on. You know, I have 4 kids, 12 grandkids, most of them are females, and we need to do the obvious. Cell phones, TikTok, know who our kids are with or who they're talking to. You know, traffickers are not old guys in trench coats. They're not. They're young, good-looking guys. And
so that precludes any of us.
That's right. Most of us. Anyway.
Except the one in the middle.
The girls are enticed many, many ways, from being kidnapped to meeting somebody at the mall, setting up another date later. All of those things are the ways that the traffickers take our children.
Social media.
Yeah, social media. Give you one example. There's a lady in Houston whose daughter met a guy online, and daughter wants to go meet this guy at the local pizza parlor. Mama says, you're not going unless I go too. And so Mama goes, pulls up to the slot right in front of the pizza parlor. Girl goes out, goes inside, and as soon as she goes inside, she disappears out the back door. I mean, it happens every kind of way. And they're smarter than we give them credit for. So we just need to start with our own families and our neighbors. Make sure that people know what's going on. And let me make this one comment about metanoia. They haven't mentioned it yet. Most people who get involved in helping get tired. They get worn out because of who they're dealing with. The massive problems these young girls and boys have. So the turnover rate in shelters is pretty high. But when the sisters come, things change a lot, because the sisters live there and they're there long term. They're not there 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. They're there for years. And they build up a trust with these young ladies, where other systems don't really have that. So you have to see a lot of shelters with a lot of turnover. We can't put them in other situations like foster care. 2/3 of trafficking victims in the United States somewhere had been in foster care. So that's a whole other story. So, but the system where the sisters work, and we've got them coming from foreign countries, and more want to help, that works. And so that's a positive note on all of the darkness that we kind of have been talking about. It really does work.
Like even with the juvenile, we have rotary groups, Knights of Columbus, parish groups, and we got about 5 of them who do a meal one day a week. That helps us, because of the vetting and the fingerprinting and everything, and we just can't have everything with juveniles. But the Knights of Columbus will give us, some gift cards to Walmart or wherever, things like that. When you got an $850,000 bill, every year, school's coming up, they bring school supplies. Our children love to express themselves in art. So you just talk to the director and say, what are some of the goods, what are some of the things we can do? Judge is absolutely correct. Protect your own first. And then after that, if you want to, be helpful. Sure, monetary, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But there are a lot of different ways, whether they're adult or juvenile, they need services. They need services all the time. And it's on the market services that we got to pay for. So if you're a therapist and you want to donate some time, that's great. But if you donate and you say you can be there every Wednesday morning from 9 to 12, either you be there every Wednesday morning from 9 to 12 or don't show up. The kids have been, they've been stood up enough. Yeah.
Have you thought about making a video and sending out to the parishes so that they can put a slide out at the church for those who want to attend, like you're doing here instead of you being here?
Well,
and maybe send it, and so it can be seen in all parishes.
Well,
in the US.
I told you I retired a week ago. No, a lot of things have happened this week, and it's a God thing. Okay, I got asked to review the movie. The National Catholic Register, did the Sound of Freedom, and those people who are doing the work. It's the Order of Malta and Metanoia Manor. Then this week, the governor's wife of Louisiana got contacted by PBS, and they want to do a documentary on us. So those are things that are going to be very, very helpful. I happen to have my own television studio because I produce for Catholic TV out of Boston, and we can. I've done a couple shows on trafficking. I don't let him on camera because he doesn't, But anyway, no. But we don't take each other seriously, but we take our work very seriously.
Suggestion? You ever thought about EWTN and going to them first because you have the sites?
I've done shows with Mitch Pacquiao. EWTN is a different kind of censorship. I don't know. But Mitch and I have done shows.
Which they didn't show.
Yeah.
Have you thought about all the executive producers on that movie and hitting them up for funding? One of them is John Paul Gloria here in Austin. And
I don't know if anyone can get that article, send it to him, connect me, I'm all in.
get what up.
The article that I'm going to hand you right now to send to yourself. But
Okay.
I just unsubscribed to iHeartDogs.com. Give me a break.
What? Any other questions? Yes.
Well, you mentioned, obviously, this is a very juicy business because the consequences are not there. So, what can we do politically to basically ask our representatives to be like, we need to take care of business. Those people cannot go to jail for 3 months. I mean, at some point there has to be punishments on the practice side so that
Elect good judges.
yes, I mean, especially for you. I mean, I
That's-
don't know, but
Yeah.
All right.
what can we do also on that
Why?
side?
You got the Jeffrey Epstein case.
Yep.
How come no one's ever heard who that list was?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that.
'Cause they
I'm
might
not
die.
making a political statement. I'm just saying, every priest in the United States who ever touched a child. and they get in the paper every couple of months, they rerun that. How come the Lolita Express never got
Dead or
any
alive.
traction?
Well,
It's true.
yeah, it's true. I just want to say another thing. We're dealing with our kids. There are kids coming across the border. There are the coyotes bringing them in. But right now, we aren't getting them.
No.
We're just not getting them. But think of their position too. They're young. They don't have the language. They don't have the culture. They're being very afraid of their trafficker, and they go underground, and we don't get them.
And they come from countries where you can't trust the police.
Exactly. So we've got to do something about that somewhere around the line.
That's completely untapped right now. That's completely untapped. The 85,000 children were given addresses at the border, and now our government has no idea where they are. An uncle in New York, they were given a name. You have 85,000 children who cross the border that nobody knows where they are. And I'm going to tell you 84,000 of them are being trafficked.
Yeah.
We got a lot of work to do. Congressman Poe and Father Chuck and I met with Ted Poe. Congressman Poe and I met with Mike Pence at the White House. Mike Pence is going to be at this conference we're speaking at in Napa. I'd love to see someone on the presidential debate stage start asking the hard questions about human trafficking.
Yeah. Jim, did you have a?
Judge, what is the law in Texas for someone caught in such trafficking?
What is the law in Texas?
It's a first-degree felony.
First degree.
Well, first degree is 5 to life.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have laws that punish the trafficker. Finally got laws that will punish the buyer. I'm one who believes that's where we need to focus in the criminal justice system, is on the buyer. And, so anyway,
Over
the
here.
governor's office is doing stuff with helping track shelters.
Yes.
So follow-up question to that. How do we prosecute the parents that are trafficking children that show it simply as sexual abuse and labeling it as sex trafficking?
I'm sorry.
How do they? If we're talking about 42% of the kids being trafficked by their primary caregiver, how do you go after the parents?
The laws apply to parents as a trafficker as well. If they're a trafficker, the same laws apply to them. They can get the same punishment as a stranger who's a trafficker.
Our second
And
born.
remove parental rights from the parent. You can do all of those things. And law enforcement is doing a good job in certain areas like massage parlors. Go after the money, which is make it a public nuisance. It's a civil. You don't have to go criminal. Public nuisance, massage parlor, public nuisance. Shut it down and take the property away from the owner if the owner is involved. That's one of the ways they're doing in Houston, is to shut these things down. Primarily those are international trafficking victims. But there are some things that the police is doing to stop this.
All right, let me add on to that. Father Chuck was telling me about Allie, our second born, who tried to hang herself. Allie was her father's 17th child by 11 women. And the first 16 were boys. And he found out he could do something different with the daughter than he can with the son. They were going to court, and she asked me, how come I can't turn my daddy in? Mother's a crack addict, somewhere's off. She's 15 years old. We had to let her go because her dad taught her how to fight, and she messed up some young girls' faces. Okay? Getting a child who has nobody else in the world to cut off your last, bloodline, can't do it. I mean, I don't blame them. I have no idea what would have happened to me. The other thing we had is, of these juveniles, 60% in the U.S. are juvenile victims. 30% of those are now boys. Little boys, the market's getting bigger and bigger, unfortunately. But anyway, go ahead.
The reason I asked that question, and you talked about
Yeah. Yep. I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Way in the back.
I wonder if the Austin police officers can speak to what's going on the streets in Austin, and particularly what are our judges doing when these folks get caught?
What?
Yeah,
Come up here
on.
so you can. They
Let
can.
me start with a caveat. It's been about 12 years. I ran the human trafficking unit at APD. I retired, and I haven't been in the scene, but I do tell you that what they're saying here about the shelter is one of the hardest things because first of all, you can't put them in prison. You can't detain them forcefully because they're victims. And a lot of times it's a place where they can educate them, feed them, have some therapy for them because they're broken. No child grows up saying, I want to be a prostitute. It's one of the things I learned. And even when they become adults, most of them are still being trafficked here. And through the internet, it's so much easier. But we had a unit specifically designated, and our goal was to try to figure out which ones were the young girls, the ones that would pose and then we would make a case on them.
Backpage.com.
Right, and Backpage and all those. But it was not to prosecute them. It was mainly to arrest them, bring them in, and then hopefully they would speak to us as to who their trafficker was. And then in turn, we would go after the trafficker. We'll try to get the guy. But it's one of the hardest things to prosecute because a lot of victims, like you say, there you have the Romeo or the gorilla guys, they're afraid of them, or they think they're in love. Some of these girls don't even know they're being trafficked. They just think
Right.
Stockholm Syndrome.
they haven't had the love. Most of them, they never had the love of a father, so they seek the first person that gives them that attention.
Are we exaggerating the prevalence?
Not at all. Not at all. And most of, when I talk to people with trafficking, they would say, in Austin? And, we've dealt with Chinese immigrants, we've dealt internationally, but U.S. citizens are being trafficked just
As much.
as much.
Yeah.
And nail salons, sometimes as waitresses, or they offer them jobs as
Russian
waitresses.
tea drinkers.
And then before you know it, they have to put them into the sex. And it's hidden. It is hidden. But the Austin Police has a unit called Human Trafficking Unit. We had a task force with federal agents, FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and all that. But the mindset of a victim, it is so hard to break. And that's why they need those shelters to stay there, not just 2, 3, 4, 5 days. We're talking months and even years. And there's
Yes.
one now in Bastrop, but limited number of beds. So that's the whole thing. If we can get educated, bring these girls in a safe place, and get them the treatment and the things they need.
Yes.
To give them that dignity so that they can help lawmakers and police in turn.
We also had a home here in Texas and ended up one of the staff started trafficking the girls.
Yeah. Now, it takes about 6 months for the girls to start trusting the sisters. So it just takes that much time for that.
Let me add one thing. There is some good news. These are the hardest cases to make in a criminal court. Across the board, they're the hardest. And you don't get cooperation from the victim. They don't want to testify.
They're
Sometimes
scared.
because they feel bonded to the trafficker or they're scared or whatever. They don't want to testify. And the system shouldn't make them testify. Go through all of this in front of 12 strangers. So prosecutors are starting to figure out there's a better way. Try the case like you would try a murder case. You don't try it with the victim. You make the case with the police, and you make the case knowing that you're not going to call the victim to testify. And they're starting to see success in Texas with that type of mentality in prosecution of cases without the victim. Don't continue to victimize the victim. And that's working.
And when a coyote tells someone coming across the border, we'll kill your family back in the village, you can book it, baby. They're not bluffing. And they've seen it. And so some of these kids will never come up to the surface. It's the ultimate guerrilla intimidation. But we've seen it a lot.
I was telling you 42% are trafficked by their primary caregiver. And that's a hard fact. My best guess is about 30% are runaways, and usually from a bad home situation, no father in bad home situation. And within 48 hours, they're contacted by a girl, and they get trapped into it. Maybe 10% get trafficked
away.
from the internet. Think if they're talking to a 15-year-old boy and it's a trafficker, and they grab them.
There was a website called Backpage.com under the Trump administration was shut down with Congresswoman Ann White from St. Louis. But you go online and say, I'm in Dripping Springs, Texas, and I'm looking for some entertainment. And I'm telling you, within 30 seconds, you have pages and pages and pages of young girls, all in different forms of undress and, emphasizing what they want to emphasize. No full frontal nudity or anything like that. They've all got what they'll do, and of course, they all say they're 18. But when you do it, you start noticing a lot of the same tattoos. That's how we brand our cattle. That's how we brand our girls. And traffickers will know who this belongs to by those tattoos.
I was in Las Vegas for a conference. They're high tech there. They're chipping them like you chip a dog.
Yep.
No, somebody back there. Yes, ma'am.
Gentlemen, I was thinking about the incident about a year ago that the young girl from Houston that was from the NBA basketball game. Do you remember that story? She was captured.
Dallas Mavericks game.
Pardon me?
It was Dallas Mavericks game, wasn't
Yes,
it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
She went to the bathroom. She was there with her father, loving family. She went to the bathroom, and this is when this really hit home, because then I realized that this human trafficking wasn't just girls that ran away or whatever. She went to the bathroom and she was taken.
Yes.
And the wonderful thing was, though, that she was found, I believe, she was found in a hotel in the South, I want to say Arkansas or something. Do you happen to know, was she in a situation where her parents had finances where they could be looking for her? Or I remember that the person working at the hotel called the police and said these people have come in. It was like one woman and three men with a young girl. Do you recall that incident? Or she was
I
found
recall the incident. I don't know
She was
the
found very
resources
quickly,
of the
considering
parents.
what some of these girls deal with for years.
But I can tell you, if they're over 14 and they disappear, kids do that. Kids do that. They run away, you punish them, you took away their...
No,
She
no.
was taken out of the bathroom.
Well,
He's
no,
not
I know
questioning
that.
you.
Yeah, that one I think they had a video in the stadium that saw her being taken out.
Yeah.
But if your daughter says I'm going to the mall with my friends and she doesn't come home that night, you call the police. You really believe the police is going to put everybody out to do that here in Austin, the 10th largest city in Texas? It's not going to happen. Well, kids are big kids and they get with their friends and they forget what time it is, or maybe if you punish them, they don't want to come home. That's the sort of thing. So when these kids are actually taken, unless you have a video evidence, more often than not, you're going to need to pay big money to see your child again. Yes.
Well, I just want to say two things. One, recently there was an incident at the Domain here in Austin, which is a high-end mall up in
Yeah.
where there was a woman who appeared to be pregnant, and she had an SUV, and she was trying to put a package in the back of it, and she asked a young girl to help her get the package in the car. And we teach our children to help people. Well, the girl put the box in the car, and then she was pushed in, and the door was closed shut, and off they went. So, you've got to be vigilant.
It hits close to home. My granddaughter was at a volleyball tournament in Minneapolis with a 12-year-old group. One of her friends went to the bathroom. A gentleman went into the bathroom and says, "I'm your uncle, I'm here to get you," grabbed her, pulled her
especially in those areas that don't make a distinction between male and female, and just goes back. I mean, it's a side effect. Yes, please.
I just want to say that the movie, The Sound of
Freedom
is showing at Barber Creek.
Oh, okay. To Boyd's Creek, Sound of Freedom. It's broken.
It's also a gateway. It's also a gateway.
Yes.
So what kind of help can we give you here at St. John Newman?
Well, I asked, besides helping us spread the message, you need for us to come back for Rotary, you need for us. We don't have a fee for anything other than expenses, okay? That's the way we roll. He's independently wealthy. No, we will help you spread the word. I've got 16 nuns that I'm trying to bring. I've been invited to the G20. And I'm going to try and go a week earlier. I work with the former head of Scotland Yard's Human Trafficking Division. We're going to the G20. And there's 16 nuns from India. By the time we do immigration issues, which has become rather costly, I want to bring them to the board and just bring them, but I'm getting political now. But no, it's between $3,000 and $5,000. But by the time I do immigration issues, transport, training, and placement, it's about $7,500 a month.
So do you have, I missed that, do you have a website or what?
Well, there is.
We have
where are those papers?
right there in back of Father, and they look like this.
We have the information. We also have our website on there. Jimmy and Joel Mansour, her family, and if ever you need to get in touch with us, you know, they always know how we can be reached. Jimmy and Joe, stand up. They're not much to look at, but you can't choose it. Here, yes.
Seems to me that you already have the plan already, but about shelters, it looks like, well, that's what you're lacking, shelters. Shelters and a manpower. So what sort of plans do you have, you guys have, so that we could help, or I could help for the shelter?
All right, let me tell you how I did mine. A long story, but anyway, as a young priest, I founded a tax-free corporation called Metanoia Inc. Through a series of fundraisers, Aaron Neville and I have a CD out together. I raised about $900,000 on that. Long story, I ended up with $1.6 million. And I told this nun in Rome who introduced me to all this, you get me nuns, I'll open up a shelter. First of all, you need funding. Funding, and, you know, perhaps there's some places available from the church. They're not being used, parishes, but I wouldn't think so. This diocese is busting loose. You know, it really is. So, you know, a placement, a security issue, okay? And then staffing, all right? I have a 501c3 corporation. If anything, and I'm licensed by the state. My regulatory issue is this, you know, the 456 pages. But as long as I follow that, I'm protected by the state. Because it's the state who assigns kids to me. We get Office of Juvenile Justice, Department of Children and Family Services, FBI private placement, or children's hospitals. Okay? Because ours is a custodial issue with that age group, okay? Now, if you ask the church to do something with sexually traumatized children, they're going to run the other way. We've had enough of our own problems, and I'm not, you know, you talk about sexually abused children, well, we're still paying off lawsuits because of a few bad actors, okay? And so, I would recommend a 501c3 corporation that's a limited liability corporation. You get a group together, we'll help you set up a shelter. We'll help find nuns to come here. That's what we're doing. And, and we'll help educate. But the first place, we'd like to educate the priest and the bishop. We'd like everyone in this diocese to know what's going on. And they don't. And it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Like I said, this is the ugly underbelly of society that nobody wants to deal with.
This is a cancer that is growing, not everybody knows about it. And it's, I heard something today that somebody said, I never thought that this was going to happen to me. And we're all in that danger. I don't know if it's going to happen to me. I have a 10-year-old. I don't know. It could happen to any of us, any one of us. So that's why I'm asking, what is it that we're lacking shelters, you're lacking manpower. That's why I asked that question. How is it that we can help monetarily?
Yeah, well, I mean, and you know that. I mean, what's the issue when you ask the government, why don't we have mental health facilities for these people that really ought to be in a facility and not on the street? There's no money. How come you haven't built a shelter? There's no money. I mean, that's...
There's so much red tape involved too.
Well, yeah, but...
Well, juveniles, a big problem with juveniles.
Here in Austin, called the Austin Plan, which opened up in Falls with us down south.
Yeah.
And they say juveniles also, right when they escape.
All right, yeah, let's let everybody hear our conversation. But getting together a group of people who are willing to make this happen, who've got some resources, can set up a 501c3, because you don't want to open up. I mean, if they sue me, and let me tell you what's going to happen. We got a little girl from Chicago right now. But a lot of these parents, dual addicted, they don't really care about the kids. The kid's been gone 3 years. The kid shows up in my shelter, very traumatized. That child commits suicide. They want $5 million for their precious baby that they've been searching for. So that's why you set up a 501c3 LLC. I don't know what your livelihood is, but don't tie it into your business, because it's a shame if you're very profitable in your business. Don't tie it into that. Get a 501c3 limited liability corporation. You want us to come back? You want to? Yeah, do a dinner for 20, 30 people. Can make this happen. Figure out how we can do it. We'll do it. But that's what needs to be done. You've got a good friend in Governor Abbott's office. Okay, Texas has been very, very aggressive in this. I mentioned Andrea Sparks. She's now with Buckner, but Andrea's great. And Judge Poe, the CAC in Houston, a lady by the name of Elaine Stoltz. No one's got it solved, but I'll tell you what, Texas is making a real good effort. All right, yes.
So earlier you talked about how social media is a problem because that's the way to get girls to children. How does the legal system and the law enforcement work with those social media companies, and do you see them as part of the solution?
There's a big thing going on with TikTok right now, and TikTok is really, really doing it. Social media, I mean, you see the Zuckerberg and Elon Musk war that's going on right now. That's big money. They don't give a damn. That's bottom line. That's going to have to be a legislative issue that's going to shut that down. I mean, in case you hadn't learned, when there's no morality and there's no moral fiber to appeal to, you go for the money. That gets their attention, not their sense of decency. And, that's legislative. It's got to be. Yes, sir.
Okay, so
You convinced us that faith-based shelters are the best to go, right? So.
Well, that was the Church of Christ guy who did that.
Well,
It's still true.
so, I thought you were saying that too, that faith-based, we have the nuns come in and you can, do what you want to do, and don't depend on government funding to, run your shelters. I thought that was your point also.
What else? The last part of
Well, I thought that you wanted private donations so the government could tell you what to do. I thought that was kind of the strategy. But anyway, my question is there any faith-based shelters already established in Texas?
In Texas,
Yes.
we have nuns working for Santa Maria. Father Dean, are you familiar with that?
Where is it?
It's right outside of Houston. The Santa Marias, we have,
It's in Brazoria County.
the Sisters of St.
It's in Brazoria County.
Yeah, the Sisters of St. Michael the Archangel working there. And they're faith-based, but they're not Catholic. And, I'm going to say something to a Catholic group that I wouldn't say the other night when I spoke in Georgetown, just because I know I'm dealing with here now. But anyway. I've been a priest 44 years. The word evil has a connotation for me that has not been part of my vocabulary for many years. In the last 8 or 10 years, I've seen evil differently. Our children, and Father Chuck will tell you about them, they are so wonderful. They love us. They appreciate us. 5 minutes later, they've got a steak knife. I'm going to effing kill everybody in the room, and they throw a chair through the window. Nothing's happened. Nobody's yelled at them. Nobody's antagonized them, whatever. And so, quick as I am, I said, I have no idea what these kids have been exposed to. And I know Satanism is very real. It's not a myth anymore. Satanism and satanic cults are everywhere, because I've gone hand to hand with them in Baton Rouge. So anyway, I called the diocesan exorcist. I said, Ruben, man, I told him everything going on. He said, you're not off the mark. So we planned a field day for the kids, because I wouldn't put the kids through that. 3 priests, the nuns, staff. We came and we said Mass at 10:30. We went through that house. We anointed every door, every window, every opening, every piece of electronic, every television, everything. And, we anointed with the oil, said the prayers against the evil one, had lunch and left. The girls came back about 4 o'clock from their field trip. They went and put everything upstairs. 2 of the girls came running down, screaming, there's been an effing priest in my room! Who let an effing priest in my room? These kids knew. Kids knew. So, you want to know what you do? Pray for us. This is real evil we're dealing with, and people who are part of this are truly evil. Please pray for that and pray for these children. But, it's going to be, there's no one size fits all. There can be situations here in Texas that are going to have to be hybrid, and it took us the longest time. Every kid changed the dynamics of that house. You get a 16-year-old alpha dog and you got 3 11-year-olds. We ended up having one of our girls who had been trafficked and by her father with cocaine, and then the sexual abuse, and then all his friends, and he didn't have to work anymore. He's making enough money on her. We ended up having to get rid of her because she was trying to groom the younger girls to work for her. I mean, she's just doing what she's learned. So, you know, I mean, to make the case about how serious it is, I hope we've done that. If there's nothing else you can do and you can pray for us, please, God, we need it. The sisters need it. And I'm going to repeat again. You know, these nuns, I mean, you know, that's the pig and the chicken, and they're walking down the street, and they see a ham and egg breakfast.
Yeah.
And the chicken said, "What's your problem?" The pig said, "You bring the eggs and you keep going. I bring the ham and my butt is here to stay." Okay? They're the ones who are there to stay. And they're incredible women. Incredible women. And we're just very blessed to have that. And we want to repeat that. And so anything you can do, these papers tell you, and it's a state thing, we had to put all three accounts together. I've got an account that does the conference that we hold every year. I've got an account for nuns training, I've got an operational account. State said we had to put them all together. So in the memo section, when you make it out to metanoia, it's nuns training, so that we know which pot it goes into for us to do that. This code, this QR code, can tell you about us, what we do, how to get in touch with us, and how to know when it's time to shut up so Father Dean can close this up.
I've known Father Jeff for probably 15, 20 years. We were in kind of the same circles when we were doing seminary work or vocations work. And I just met Father Chuck the other day and just met the congressman this evening. But as a 61-year-old priest, they were very self-deprecating about what they're doing and, you know, singing the praises of the nuns, and that's true. As one that's almost counting the days till I can retire at age 70, and to think that a 70-year-old and an 83-year-old priest are doing this when they don't have to be doing it is incredibly edifying and admirable for me. So I want to say for myself and probably on behalf of everyone, thank you very much for the work that you're doing in the Congressman as well. And I hope those who are interested in continuing the conversation and anything that we can do as a parish or with our groups within the parish to assist them in this effort to somehow work with and attack and deal with this worldwide pandemic. We've gone through other worldwide pandemics, but this is really amazing. Just the staggering numbers and just how messed up it is. And as Father Jeff said, just the unmistakable presence of sheer evil. And if we don't know what evil is, I think what they've just told us is certainly an example or exhibit A of what evil is. And so I'm very humbled and I have great respect for the work that you guys are doing and the nuns and everybody else. So thank you very much for being here this evening. We assure you of our prayers and certainly safety for your travels back to Louisiana and other places. So thank you, and thank you very much for being here this evening. I'm sorry.
Someone asked about a video. I produce TV for Catholic TV out of Boston, and online it's Closer Walk Catholic Communications. And you can, Closer Walk Catholic Communications. And we have shows online, and I've done shows on trafficking. So you may find that show on trafficking worthwhile, and then we can talk about it from there. Yeah.
You got a couple of YouTube.
Yeah, I've got some YouTube. There's a YouTube.
Yeah, you can just Google his name on YouTube. So thank you very much for your presence here this evening, and I hope everybody has a safe trip home and a blessed week. Thank you. How are you?